Kiki is an ugly loner who ignores all the girls in school to send for his busty club president. However, everything changes when he asks her out, but discovers she actually just wants to be his pet and perform freaky tricks for him instead.
I'm replacing the smell of other females with my sweet scent.
It all begins one morning when Kiki worries G-6 might come out before he gets a girlfriend. Suddenly, he gets a text from the club president, Sayuki, asking him to come to the Shoto club room after school. Later, Kiki helps Sayuki clean up the club room when another girl named Yuka joins them and blames Sayuki for making cleaning difficult for them. Another member named Nanju joins the everlasting cleaning, so Kiki calls in reinforcements, his sister Mizua. After hours of cleaning up the mess, Kiki offers to finish up the work, so Sayuki hands him the key to lock up and the girls leave. After, Kiki goes to dump the dirty water when he spots a happy couple and wishes they would step on a landmine. However, when he returns to the club room, Kiki spots a letter addressed to him and realizes he's finally got an admirer. At this, Kiki celebrates the end to his joyless single life. However, when it dawns on him that he doesn't know who it is, he spots a cheek hammock on the table and freaks out when he realizes what that means. Later, Kiki tells his friend, Shoma, about his silky surprise, so they try to play detective. But since they couldn't figure out who it was, Shoma wishes Kiki good luck on his search for the mystery princess and predicts that the mystery girl must be part of the cleaning crew. Later at the library, Kiki thanked Yuka for helping out with the cleaning, and she said that she's glad to be of service to him. While he wonders if Yuka is his Cinderella, she asks if he prefers large melons. Before he freaks out, Yuka shuts him up and points out that she thought he joined the Shadow Club because of Sayuki's magical stress balls. After Kiki debunks this, he asks Yuka why she never gets along with Sayuki, and she explains that Sayuki's Jenga-sized orbs make hers seem non-existent. When Kiki admits that it's true, Yuka decides to make him suffer and leaves the library. Afterwards, while they play basketball, Shoma asks Kiki if he's made any progress on his investigation, but he says the suspects all acted normally. Just then, he catches Nanju staring at him on the sidelines and wonders if she's staring at Shoma. Distracted by this, he gets knocked out by the basketball. When he wakes at the clinic, he spots a pair of fine legs that rock his world.
Nice.
On looking up, he realizes it's Nanju sitting at his bedside, so he asks if she stayed because of him. In response, Nanju says she was just bored. After this, she asks if he caught a ball with his face because he was staring at someone he likes, but Kiki couldn't provide an answer. So he asks if she'd support him if he were interested in someone, but Nanju says she won't and takes her leave. Later that day, Kiki finds Sayuki playing with a dog and asks if it's hers. In response, she says she named the dog Vegetarian. Unimpressed, Kiki says its name doesn't do justice to its look. Just then, the dog's owner arrives and thanks Sayuki for taking care of her dog. While they leave, Sayuki says she advised the dog, so Kiki says she must like dogs a lot. The next day, Kiki heads to the club room to confront Sayuki about the silky surprise, but when he asks her to try it on to be sure, she screams for help and collapses. While Kiki wonders if he'll be bawling in a jail yard soon, Sayuki asks if he wants to go out with her. Shortly after this, Sayuki feasts on a glass of parfait, while Kiki wonders how he'd survive the rest of the month. After Sayuki thanks him, Kiki asks if she has the hots for him, but she suddenly gets gloomy and flees the scene. Later, Kiki spots Sayuki leaving the school and catches up to pull off a romantic wall slam. Surprised, Sayuki asks him what he wants, and he reveals he knows her secret. Sayuki then asks if he now dislikes her, but Kiki says it's not a bad thing. Hearing this, Sayuki tells him to meet her in the club room the next day. When he arrives at the club room the next day, Sayuki says she has always had a feeling he'd be the one to accept her for who she is and tells him to close his eyes. When she tells him to open them, Kiki finds Sayuki's humongous plots on display and a leash on her neck. Startled, Kiki freaks out and asks what she's doing, so Sayuki begs him to make her his pet.
You serious?
Shocked, Kiki asks her to explain, so Sayuki says she wants to be owned by him, freaking Kiki out. She then reveals that she's a ropes and whip specialist and has been dreaming about him using his whip on her all night long. Kiki then realizes why she invited the dog, so he turns her down. Later that day, Kiki bumps into Okita, his teacher, who then commends him for cleaning up the club room, and reveals that she checked the room after they cleaned but found the door unlocked. Afterward, Kiki informs Shoma of his new discovery, and Shoma figures clumsy Cinderella could be any of the other girls since the door was unlocked. After this, Kiki asks Shoma if he's ever fantasized about making a girl his pet, but Shoma reveals that being a lolicon, he'd be posing for mugshots if he ever thought of that. Some moments later at the library, while Kiki thinks about how sweet Yuka is, Sayuki whispers some sweet nonsense in his ears, startling him. When Kiki tells her to stop startling him, she insinuates that he could discipline her for being insolent. Unfazed, Kiki asks if she took a wrong turn on her way to the cafeteria. but Sayuki says she's there to see him. And when she hugs his arm, Kiki comments that he could feel her honker bonkers, but she says it's insignificant. While Kiki disagrees, Yuka arrives and asks if they're trying to share body warmth. Despite Yuka, Sayuki announces that they've crossed the just friends threshold since they went on a date. Hearing this, Yuka's mood drops and Kiki notices, so he asks if she's angry because she wants a parfait too. Suddenly, Yuka dashes out of the library. Shortly after this, Sayuki browses through the bookshelves while Kiki nags her about her distracting presence. Sayuki then asks why he's being harsh after all they did together. Shocked, Kiki asks what she means, and Sayuki reveals that he romantically pinned her to the wall and violently raided her dungeons. While he feigns innocence, Kiki gets a deadly stare from Yuka on the other side of the shelf, startling him. So he tries to debunk this, but Sayuki suddenly picks up a book on dog training and dashes off. Yuka then asks Kiki if he truly went on a date with Sayuki, but he says he only bought her a glass of parfait under duress. However, when she asks if the romantic wall slam was forced too, Kiki admits to doing that willingly. Pissed, Yuka asks if they're officially dating since he's always simping for her. Just then, Kiki asks how he could make her feel better, so Yuka asks him to go on a date with her. Afterward, Kiki waits for her at their meeting point, and when Yuka arrives, he compliments her looks and makes her blush. Yuka then says she expects to be wild on the date, but Kiki reminds her that he's just escorting her as an elder. Shortly after this, they head to a movie theater, and after they watch a movie together, they chat over drinks and explore a few other places. On their way back, Kiki points out that they went window shopping, but when Yuka says the date is all that matters, Kiki reveals that it's his first real date. Hearing this, Yuka gets excited to be his first and hurries off to the toilet. Feeling accomplished, Kiki wonders if he'll make it through the day without dropping dead from the excitement. Some minutes later, Kiki wonders why Yuka is taking so long. So he goes around to look for her and finds her accosted by some lame guys shooting blank shots. So he hurriedly grabs her and pulls her away from them. When they stop to catch their breath, Kiki blames himself for leaving her unaided. So Yuka rubs his head and kisses him for arriving in time to save her. On the train ride home, while Yuka naps on Kiki's shoulder, he flashes back to how he met Yuka at the library and found her reading a book. He asked her what she was reading, and despite her cold responses, he realized it was a book he had read. So they talked about the book and became buddies afterward. Kiki then wonders how fun his life would be if Yuka were Cinderella. The next day, during lunch break, Shoma asks Kiki if he's made any progress with his investigation, but Kiki says he was enjoying the first date of his lifetime. Shoma then commends him for hoisting the loli flag, but Kiki denies being a lolicon. While Shoma explains why he thinks lolis are the best, Kiki gets a text from Yuka, inviting him to the library to discuss some important stuff after school. After school, Kiki heads to the meeting point and finds Yuka waiting for him at the library. Suddenly, Yuka plays hide and seek while cooking up some riz sick enough to blow Kiki off his feet. Eventually, when she pops the question, Kiki says she must be mistaken and tries to confirm if she actually asked him to be her slave. When Yuka confirms this, Kiki freaks out, while she explains that being her slave is a flex most boys would sell their balls to experience. To persuade him further, Kiki decides to give him a treat and takes off her cheek huggers. On presenting it to him, Kiki points out that not all boys are into that.
Come on, man.
So Yuka knocks him off his feet and stuffs his mouth. While Yuka gets excited about how hot her snuggle shorts looks in his mouth, Kiki wonders if he'll walk into the afterlife with a mouthful of silk. The next day, Kiki wakes up from a nightmare, thinking he respawned after dying from Yuka attack. While she prepares breakfast, Mizua asks if he had a bad dream, but Kiki remains mute, since his dream was for mature audiences only. Afterward, in the school locker room, Kiki thinks about his love life puzzle, but gets interrupted by Nanju, who then asks what he's up to. In response, Kiki says he's living his romantically mediocre life. Suddenly, Kiki finds a pair of bounce loss in his locker and screams, shocking Nanju, who then wonders if his head is screwed on straight. After she leaves angrily, Kiki checks his locker and finds a note from Yuka. Later in the evening, Kiki meets up with Yuka and asks what her plan is. Yuka presents her rack packs to him as a present, but Kiki asks if she's wearing one. Shocked, Yuka freaks out and says she wouldn't give the other boys the pleasure of seeing her like that. In addition, she says that he's the only one she'd like to make a slave. When Kiki checks his locker some other time, he finds lewd pictures of himself with Sayuki, alongside a letter where she threatens to leak more of the pictures if he doesn't show up at the club room. Immediately, Kiki heads to the club room and finds Sayuki dolled up as a cafe maid. He then shuts the door and opens it again to be sure it's not one of his wet dreams spilling out. But to his dismay, he finds Sayuki's milk jugs on display. So he asks when the club became a maid cafe, and Sayuki explains that she's only practicing what she read in the book she borrowed from the library. Pissed, Kiki orders her to change the outfit, but Sayuki explains that she's cuffed and had mistakenly dropped the key in her chest storage. When Sayuki asks Kiki to get it for her, He hesitates and turns to go get a girl,
Come on, man.
but halts when Sayuki says she needs to use the toilet immediately. Just then, while Kiki slowly reaches for the key with trembling hands, Sayuki asks him to be gentle since it's her first time. So Kiki gets the key while Sayuki makes happy noises. After unlocking the cuffs, he blames her for getting herself in such a messy situation and wonders what she would have done if he hadn't shown up. To reward him for that, Sayuki deletes her blackmailing chip and clings to him. Kiki then asks why she's been touchy, but Sayuki says she's marking her territory. After this, Kiki asks why she blackmailed him into meeting her, and Kiki asks if he's gotten tired of her. She then announces that she'd do anything for him if he accepts to be her master, but Kiki dashes out of the room, saying it's not right when there's no love. Later that day, Shoma asked Kiki about his investigation, but he thought about Sayuki and Yuka's proposals and figures. Neither of them could be Cinderella. Just then, Shoma announces that the only suspect left is Nanju, since she always stares at Kiki and blushes when she does. Surprised, Kiki stares at Nanju, who then returns the stare and frowns at him. Shortly after, Kiki wonders why girls are like quantum physics equations and wishes there were crash courses on understanding them. Just then, he gets a text from Sayuki inviting him to the club room. To prevent her from doing something crazy, he heads towards the club room, but suddenly gets blindfolded by someone who then asks him to guess who it is. Judging from her voice, Kiki identifies Yuka and tries to take her hands off. However, Yuka announces that she's without clothes and tells him to keep his eyes shut while she guides him into the classroom where she left her clothes. After she sits him down in the class, Yuka ties Kiki up, so he opens his eyes and comments that she got dressed really fast. In response, Yuka reveals that she isn't dumb enough to flaunt her assets in the school hallway. Just then, Yuka asks if he's going to Sayuki's lair again and decides to punish him for leaving her to go after the heavy-chested demon. Suddenly, Yuka offers him her foot and threatens to steal his precious first kiss if he doesn't kiss it. Shocked to hear this, Kiki exclaims while Yuka slowly moves her lips closer to his. Suddenly, Sayuki shows up to ruin the heist and says she has always known Yuka to be a thieving cat. In response, Yuka asks how Sayuki found them, so she reveals that she stalks Kiki for a living. When Sayuki tries to set Kiki free, Yuka claims he belongs to her, but Sayuki disagrees and claims Kiki is her master. While they bicker over whose desires are darkest and dirtiest, Kiki gets trapped in a tug-of-war between the ladies. Suddenly, Nanju arrives on the scene to drag Kiki away, but when Yuka tries to go after her, she trips on the ropes and falls on Sayuki. Meanwhile, after freeing Kiki, Nanju gets pissed at him for being too nice to the other ladies. When she points out that Sayuki's melons seem to house a remote which controls him, and adds that he's been goofing around on dates with Yuka, Kiki asks her why she's pissed. In response, Nanju angrily fesses up that she doesn't like seeing him with other girls. The next day in the locker room, Kiki greets Nanju, but she pretends like he isn't there. So Kiki tries to initiate a conversation, but Yuka shows up to ruin the moment with her loud greetings. Pissed off, Nanju leaves, while Yuka points out that it looks like things are awkward between him and Nanju. After this, she apologizes for going too far the previous day, but adds that she's not giving him up. In response, Kiki suggests that she consider doing that. So Yuka asks if he's close to Nanju, and points out that she's a cheek-clenched martinet who only smiles when she's with him. Hearing this, Kiki doesn't disagree, so Yuka suggests that he patch things up with Nanju. Surprised, Kiki points out that she seems quite kind for someone who's into enslaving people. In response, Yuka says that a good master must learn to use both the carrot and the stick. Afterward, while Kiki ogles Nanju in class, he gets a text from Sayuki, summoning him to the club room. On visiting the club room, Sayuki asks if Nanju is sad about what happened. When Kiki confirms that she is, Sayuki reveals that she could tell when they met in the hallway and apologizes for the way she behaved the previous day. When she points out that it's not an appropriate way to behave in public, Kiki asks if she's finally going to start valuing common sense, but she announces that she'll refrain from making advances at him in public, but intensify it in private. Before Kiki protests, she promises to behave for a while since Nanju is a close friend of hers, and suggests that Kiki patch things up with Nanju. Some moments later, Kiki wakes Nanju in class and announces that classes are over. When she get up, Kiki asks if she's feeling unwell, but Nanju says it's none of his business. Kiki then asks if her sullen mood is because of what happened the previous day, but Nanju says she doesn't want to talk about it. In response, Kiki offers his therapist's services to her and turns to take his leave. However, Nanju asks if he'll listen to her, and he responds by saying it's natural to help a friend in need. Hearing this, Nanju asks if they're friends, and Kiki asks if he's the only one who thinks so. So Meiju says she's joking while heading for the door, but Kiki says it's not funny. At the door, she halts and asks Kiki why they don't hang out, since they're friends. When Kiki says that they used to hang out with Shoma, Nanju offers to let him make it up to her. After school, Nanju blows up zombie heads in an arcade game house while Kiki and Shoma whisper boy talk behind her. Suddenly, Nanju turns to ask what they're waiting for, so they join her. When the game is over, Nanju gets a stuffed angry bird as a reward, and they take pictures together. Shortly after this, Shoma bade them goodnight and zoomed off on his bicycle, leaving Kiki and Nanju. While Kiki walks her home, Nanju suddenly stops to thank him for the day, but Kiki says he had fun too, since it's been a while since they hung out. In response, Nanju comments that their relationship is fun, but she's not satisfied with the way things are. She then suggests that they move forward as a couple and not a trio. Before Kiki could respond, it began to rain, so they found some shelter, where Nanju caught Kiki obling her oranges and freaked out. In his defense, Kiki says he had no idea she was packing that much. Some minutes later, Nanju asks if Kiki is being hit on by Yuka and Sayuki, but he explains that they're just comfortable being around him. However, when Nanju points out that his face got droopy when the girls were all over him, Kiki says it's an involuntary reaction and heads off to get some drinks. When he returns, he finds Nanju staring at Shoma's picture. Disappointed, Kiki comments that she likes Shoma, but Nanju says it's not what he thinks. However, when he asks her to explain, Nanju picks up her bag and runs off. The next day at school, Shoma asks Kiki if he walked Nanju home, but Kiki reveals that he was only able to ruin his reputation. Shortly after this, in the club room, Sayuki points out that he's not putting his heart into the shadow and suggests he talk to her if he has something bothering him. In response, Kiki thanks her and takes his leave while Sayuki announces that she'll enjoy his neglect until he's ready to talk to her. After this, while Kiki reads a book at the library, Yuka shows up and points out that it's obvious he failed to square things up with Nanju. When Kiki refuses to respond, Yuka threatens to punish him if he doesn't do as he's told. On getting home, Kiki thinks about how to get through to Nanju, but then finds Mizua in his room with a book. Surprised, she comments that she never knew he was a lolicon. Shocked, Kiki debunks this and says that the book belongs to Shoma. A few moments later, Mizua gives Kiki a head rub and asks about his confused love life. So Kiki explains that things are awkward with Nanju since she seems to be hiding something from him, and he reveals he might have hurt her by asking about it. In response, Mizua tells him how difficult it can be to open up. After this, Kiki asks her for advice, and Mizua tells him to be himself and do nothing. The next day at school, Kiki approaches Nanju, and when she tries to ignore him, he threatens to grab her chest handles. Pissed off, Nanju picks up her bag and leaves while Kiki runs after her to apologize. Suddenly, Nanju stops and blames him for her sleepless nights. Hearing this, Kiki points out that he doesn't know why he's causing her much trouble and asks her to forgive him so they can be friends again. When Kiki adds that he'd do anything to make her forgive him, Nanju gets in his face to ask if he really means that. She then suggests that they become a couple. Hearing this, Kiki thinks he's finally found his Cinderella, but Nanju suddenly announces that she'd like to see Kiki in a romantic relationship with Shoma.
What?
Making him wonder if he's hallucinating. Nanju then shows him a manga series she made about him and Shoma. When he asks if it's a prank, Nanju reveals that she loves stories of when men love other men. Pissed off, Kiki asks why she's drawing a manga about him and Shoma. In response, Nanju explains why she's been behaving weirdly all along, but Kiki says he's not judging her for her interests. He then suggests she keep him and Shoma out of it. However, Nanju refuses and claims there are many girls waiting for the sequel since the shortcake series had gone viral. After this, Nanju begs Kiki to go out with Shoma for the sake of the fans, but he bluntly refuses. Just then, Nanju vows to do everything she can to prevent him from ever finding a girlfriend. Later, Kiki wonders why all the girls in his life have different shades of madness, so he checks his locker and finds a picture of himself with Sayuki in her maid outfit. While Kiki wonders who could have taken the picture, he reads a note where the culprit orders him to show up at the astronomy club. Since he runs a risk of going viral if he refuses, Kiki hurries down to the astronomy club room. On entering the empty room, he looks around, and Koharu suddenly steps out. Some days later in the Shudo club room, Kiki takes pictures of Yuka in a bunny girl outfit and thinks of how he has always wanted to clap bunny girl cheeks.
Yeah, boy.
But he knows it's beyond his reach. Just then, Kiki asks Yuka why she's in the outfit, but Sayuki reveals that she wants to join the club. Surprised, Kiki asks why, and Yuka explains she'd also like to spend a lot of time with him like Sayuki does. When she adds that she needs more time to train Kiki to be an obedient slave, Kiki isn't surprised. So Yuka announces that she's got the right to join any club in the school, while Sayuki reveals that she had her dress in the outfit all day as a right of entry. After this, Sayuki compliments Yuka's look in the outfit and reveals that she wanted to try one on too, but couldn't fit her melons into any. Annoyed, Yuka asks if Sayuki is challenging her, but Sayuki responds by calling her a flat-chested monster. Suddenly, things get heated between the two, so Kiki gets in between them to prevent an explosion. After this, Sayuki orders Yuka to go make her some tea, while Kiki asks Nanju what she was doing in the club room. To his surprise, Nanju reveals she's also a new member of the club and expects to be treated as an equal. Facing Sayuki, Kiki asks why Nanju isn't dressed in a bunny girl outfit, and she says she's already been compensated with Nanju's manga series. So Kiki freaks out and points out that Sayuki is rotten for taking bribes. Shortly after, Yuka arrives with the tea, and Kiki tries to stop her from seeing the manga. Claiming it's rated PG, however, Sayuki hands Yuka some copies of the manga and claims she has more. Just then, Kiki freaks out and tries to snatch the manga from Yuka, who was vibrating from the steamy visuals. Sayuki then tells Yuka to take in every bit of the manga and offers her a hug. However, Yuka gets knocked out by Sayuki's airbags. Meanwhile, Nanju secretly sends a text to Kiki, threatening to give Mizua a copy of her manga if he reveals why she joined the club. At this point, he realizes the club has become a complete squad of cultured degenerates. While he heads home, Kiki recalls his meeting with Koharu, where she threatened to end his career if he makes any sus moves and promises to dispose of the pictures if he obeys her instructions. When he turned to look at her, Kiki realized she's cute, so Koharu explained that she was initially happy watching from a distance, but soon had her emotions all over the place. Just when Kiki thinks she might be Cinderella, Koharu says she likes him. Immediately, Kiki grabs her hands and asks her to walk down the aisle with him, but Koharu says he's not her type, shocking Kiki. Moved by this, Kiki mistakenly switches on a projector and realizes the room is covered in pictures of him and Shoma. Koharu then apologizes and says that her target is Shoma. Later at a diner where they talk over drinks, Kiki stares at her thinking of how cute she looks, but Koharu reminds him she is in love with Shoma. She then adds that she'd like Kiki to be her Cupid, since he's the closest person to Shoma, and also reminds him that she's still got her Blackmail chip. Kiki then asks Koharu how she got the pictures, and she explains why astronomers use telescopes. So Kiki counsels Kiki on refraining from dating activities within the school premises, but he retorts, saying there's a deep reason why that happened. After this, Kiki says she might not need his help, since Shoma is into girls like her. However, Koharu says she's aware of his tastes, but reveals that she's a third year, shocking Kiki. When she reveals that she's older than him, Kiki checks out her skirt color and realizes she's really a senior. Just then, Kiki realizes it's mission impossible, since Shoma likes them young and green. So he tells Koharu that it's impossible, but she reminds him why he has no choice. Later that day, while Kiki thinks of a way to get himself out of the mess, Mizua spots him thinking and calls him. He then tells her to always let him know when she's going shopping, since heavy lifting is an older brother's job. Afterward, they get ice cream and eat it together while Kiki flashes back to when they were younger. So Mizua asks him if Yuka and Nanju really joined the club, and he marvels at how fast news spreads. When he confirms this, he adds that he's no longer needed at the club since he was only there for the head count. However, Mizua dissuades him from thinking like that, and they head home together. Other way, Mizua announces that the next day is uniform change day and says she needs to get her summer uniform. When they get home, Mizua tries on her uniform and explains that all girls start wearing the same pink skirts. Just then, Kiki gets an idea while Mizua asks about how she looks. In response, he thanks her for saving him from a catastrophe. The next day, Kiki hooks up Shoma and Koharu, and while they exchange pleasantries, he thinks about his plans to conceal Koharu's true age in class till she gets close enough to Shoma. Just then, Shoma asks Kiki how he met Koharu, and he explains that they met at the library. After this, he adds that when he realized she was a tennis lover, he decided to introduce her to his tennis prodigy friend. So they geek out on tennis-related stuff and decide to exchange contact while Kiki maintains his impede vibe. Kiki then suggests they take a picture to commemorate the occasion. So they stand together, and Kiki suggests they close up the social distance. After taking pictures, Koharu comments that talking to Shoma was a dream come true. However, Kiki reminds her that they've only exchanged contacts, but Koharu adds that they also took a picture and thanks him. Later at the astronomy club, Koharu checks Kiki out through a telescope and asks why he looks sad. When she offers to hear him out and help him, Kiki narrates his situation to her. After this, Koharu analyzes the situation and concludes that it's a mystery. After Kiki points out that his suspects turned out to be cultured bimbos, Koharu comments that the culprit might be an outsider. Surprised, Kiki asks why an outsider would risk entering the club room, but Koharu says they can't completely rule out the possibility of that. When they conclude that every girl in school is a suspect, Kiki says he can't have them all try on the bum blankets like a glass slipper. When Kiki leaves the astronomy club, he realizes Okita might know who was left in the building that day, so he decides to go ask her. but bumps into Ayano, the vice chair of the student council, who then slips and falls on him. After she thanks him for saving her, Kiki tells her to get back up, but she says she'd like to stay that way for a little longer.
I'm gonna come. Oh.
Some moments later, Kiki visits the staff room to ask Okita if she had met anyone in the club building that day. In response, Okita reveals that she walked by Ayano in the connecting hallway. Shortly after, while Kei thinks about it, Ayano shows up and introduces herself. She then says that it must be fate bringing them together again. Startled, Kiki disagrees and points out that she sneaked up on him. Seeing she's busted, Ayano reveals she was looking for him to thank him, but Kiki says she doesn't have to. As a token of her gratitude, she hands him a pack of handmade chocolates and asks him to try a piece. While Kiki munches on the sweets, he says it's delicious, but suddenly finds Ayano's lips a few inches away from his. Alarmed, he points out that she's too close and gets off the chair. When Kiki says they should get back to class, Ayano bugs him and says she's recharging to make it through the afternoon. After she leaves, Kiki checks out Ayano's pictures at the astronomy club and commends Koharu's photography skills. He then asks Koharu what she thinks about Ayano, and she gives him a debrief of everything she can dig up on her. Kiki then asks if she thinks Ayano could be Cinderella, and she responds, saying it's likely since she visits the club room for student council activities. After this, Kiki tells Koharu to stand down on the investigations and announces that he'll take it from there. Afterward, Kiki heads to the Shadow Club room and finds Yuka alone. So he asks about Sayuki's whereabouts, and she responds, saying she stepped out to take care of some business. When Kiki points out that Nanju is absent too, Yuka announces that they're alone. So Kiki trips on a rope and falls, and Yuka quickly straddles him while saying he has to take responsibility for everything he did to her. Confused, Kiki asks what she means, and Yuka narrates how he appeared in her dream and fondled her snack-sized scoops. Hearing this, Kiki declares his innocence, but Yuka insists he humiliated her. When Kiki refuses to admit this, Yuka says she'll take her pound of flesh and fiddles with Kiki's chest. Just then, Kiki screams while Yuka tells him to make more happy noises. Suddenly, Kiki reaches out and mistakenly grabs her pancakes. Embarrassed, Yuka dashes out of the club room screaming her lungs out. Not long after this, Ayano walks in and announces she's there for the club audit. While she inspects the room, Kiki asks what her student council job feels like. In response, Ayano says she needs to ensure that the club budget is spent correctly. When she's done, Ayano says she needs volunteers to pick up trash around town and suggests he join her. Thinking it's an opportunity to investigate her, Kiki accepts the offer while Sayuki peeks through the door. Later that day, when they meet, Kiki asks why Sayuki is joining them for the trash pickup, and she replies, saying she's obligated to go out of her way to help her master. Surprised, Ayano asks what she means, but Kiki says it's a joke she enjoys talking about. Some minutes later, Sayuki tells Ayano that she can't get close to Kiki because she belongs to him. Kiki then asks if they're dating, and Sayuki says the relationship is deeper than that. Ayano then says there's no problem and clings to Kiki's arms. Unfazed, Sayuki says it's meaningless, since Kiki is used to bigger melons. In response, Ayano says she might not have the size, but is confident about her shape. Meanwhile, Kiki struggles to keep his cool. Some moments later, Sayuki calls Kiki to help her out, but when he asks what she needs him for, Sayuki explains that she gets jealous when he spends time with other girls. Before Kiki responds, Sayuki pins him down and licks him while saying she's marking her territory. After she does this, Kiki realizes that grabbing her melons would only awaken the beast in her, so he recalls his grandfather's advice when he got attacked by a dog. Suddenly, Kiki spreads her rice cakes and kneads them like dough. When Sayuki gets off him, she comments on how forceful and violent he got with her. So Kiki apologizes, but Sayuki suddenly switches and says it was exciting. Just then, Sayuki walks off, leaving Kiki and Ayano to finish up. Some minutes later, Kiki informs Ayano that Sayuki has left, so she suggests they leave too, since it's getting dark. Suddenly, Kiki picks up a Playboy magazine and gets fixated on checking it, so she leaves him to enjoy, but trips and falls in filthy water. Just then, Kiki rushes to help her out, but spots her transparent shirt. Sensing this, Ayano covers up her displayed merchandise while the cultured degenerate pretends nothing happened and offers her his jacket, so she sniffs it and thanks him. The next day at school, while Kiki and Shoma grab a drink, they talk about a game they just played, and Kiki comments that since Nanju was staring, she must have gotten enough material for her manga series. Clueless, Shoma asks what he means, but Kiki says he doesn't want to know. Shortly after, while Keiken updates Shoma about his investigation on Ayano, she suddenly shows up to thank Kiki for lending her his jacket. However, when Kiki tries moving close to her, she backs off and covers her face. Eventually, Ayano takes off, leaving Kiki confused, but Suuma points out that his sweaty smell probably sent her running. Sometime later, Kiki and Ayano hang out in her apartment, so he looks around at the serene setup of the room. Just then, Ayano arrives with an apple pie. When he takes a bite, Kiki compliments her cooking skills while Ayano clings to his arm. Not long after this, Kiki realizes she's fallen asleep on his shoulder and figures it's a romantic situation. He then thinks he has finally found a fully sandal girlfriend material and dozes off. Shortly after, he wakes up and finds Ayano trying to remove his briefs. Shocked, he freaks out and asks what she's up to. In response, Ayano confesses that she has a smell fetish and prefers the odor of boys' bodies. Kiki then wonders if it's a prank, but Ayano says his body odor is her favorite and requests for his boxers. While Kiki stares, dumbfounded, Ayano explains that she had the room set up just to make him sleep. So when Kiki asks why she fell asleep first, Ayano says she slipped up since his body scent was so soothing. Some days later, Shoma and Koharu go on a date with Kiki as their background extra. While they play Romeo and Juliet, Kiki watches and figures his covert operation is playing out well since the duo seems to be getting along well. However, Kiki gets worried that Shoma's lolicon might take over when he finds out Koharu's true age, so he decides to hang around till they seal the deal. The next day, while they plan in the astronomy club room, Kiki suggests they go on a double date, impressing Koharu, who then calls him a master of dating. In response, Kiki says he's only been on dates in his dreams. Back at home, while Mizua makes lunch, Kiki steals the chicken nuggets and wonders who will take on the date. When he considers Yuka, he figures she's short-fused, so he considers Ayano and Nanju, but realizes none of them were normal enough to go out with him. Just then, Mizua busts him and tells him he can't even steal right. Later at the bowling center, Sayuki thanked Kiki for inviting her on the double date, while Kiki asked Koharu if she was nervous. In response, she confirms she is, so Kiki tries to make her relax. Just when Sayuki says she's surprised to see Koharu, Kiki asks if she knows her, and Sayuki says they were classmates in the first year. Suddenly, Sayuki almost reveals Koharu's true class, but Kiki suddenly shuts her up, drawing Shoma's attention. He then says he's just trying to prevent her from saying bad jokes. After Kiki explains the situation to Sayuki, she agrees to play along. A few moments later, Sayuki announces that she's poor at sports, surprising Kiki. So he asks why she accepted his date request. Feeling awkward, Sayuki explains that, like a loyal dog, she'd do anything for her master. When Kiki denies being her master, Sayuki suggests they set a penalty for the lowest scoring player. Worried, Kiki reminds her that she's playing for the first time. Sayuki says she can handle balls better than Koharu since she's bigger. So they decide that whoever comes third will follow any order given by the first. When the game begins, Koharu goes first and knocks down all the pins, shocking Sayuki. Shortly after, Koharu reveals that she frequents the bowling center with her family, while Sayuki wonders if she should flee. After the game, Koharu comes first, so Kiki asks her to give her orders to Shoma since he came third. Just then, Shoma begs her to be lenient, but Sayuki suggests she turn up the heat. In response, Kiki tells her to shut her trap since she came last. After this, Koharu orders Shoma to address her by her first name. The next day, Koharu informs Kiki that Shoma invited her to go out with him on the next holiday. Surprised, Kiki asks when, so Kiki figures his services are no longer needed since they're somewhere between friends and dating. After this, Koharu thanks him for linking them up, but Kiki says he's just working hard to get his lewd pictures deleted. In response, Koharu reveals that she deleted the picture the day he promised to help her. She then adds that she's going to confess her feelings and reveal her true age to Shoma. Later that day, she meets Shoma on his way home and asks him to walk home with her. Shoma then obliges, and while they walk together, Kiki hides and stalks them. Suddenly, Koharu halts and asks Shoma if he remembers meeting her at that spot a year ago. While Shoma stares blankly, Koharu narrates how he helped her retrieve her hat, which was blown away by the wind. After this, Koharu unzips her cardigan, surprising Shoma, who then realizes she's his senior. At that point, Koharu apologizes to Shoma for lying, just to get close to him. When she confesses her love to him, Shoma apologizes and says he can't date her because he's a lolicon. Afterward, in a playground, while Shoma broods about what happened, Kiki shows up and asks how it feels to dump a cute lady. Surprised, Shoma asks if he watched, and Kiki reveals that Koharu asked him to play Cupid. After this, Kiki sits and tells Shoma about how the love-struck Koharu stalked him because she couldn't approach him. After talking some sense into him, Shoma reveals he never forgot the girl he helped on the street and hoped to see her again. In addition, Shoma reveals that making her cry broke his heart. Just then, Kiki points out that the fun he had with Koharu wasn't because of her age, so Shoma says he can't remain single. Meanwhile, at the astronomy club room, Koharu weeps and wonders if she should delete Shoma's pictures. At that moment, Kiki shows up and says Shoma is to be blamed, since she did all she could. To make her feel better, Kiki paints Shoma as a loser, but Koharu says he's being insensitive. When Kiki won't stop talking about the benefits of dating an older lady, Koharu agrees with him, and while they protest together, Shoma shows up looking sober. Suddenly, Koharu weakens and begs him not to misunderstand her, but Shoma says she's just being brutally honest. In addition to this, Kima confesses that he enjoyed the time he spent with her and says he could probably use some time of lolicon rehabilitation with her. Surprised, Koharu asks what he means, and Shoma asks if they could start off as friends. In response, she says he sounds like a rom-com protagonist, since he's being indecisive on what to do with her. Hearing this, Shoma breaks down and asks Kiki not to laugh at him. Just then, Koharu says she was just messing with him for rejecting her. She then offers him her hand and suggests they start over as friends. After this, Shoma asks why it's so dark in the room and puts on the light. Suddenly, he finds the walls covered with his pictures and freaks out. Some days later, checks his private stash and pulls out Cinderella's fabric of seduction and plays with them, all wondering whose it is. Since Ayano turned out to be a body odor junkie, he figures she can't be Cinderella and wonders if it's someone from the Culture Degenerates Club. After this, he heads to the toilet, but on opening the door, he finds Mizua dressing up and freaks out. Some moments later, Mizua asks for his opinion about her silk garments, and Kiki says he thinks it suits her well. He then apologizes for walking in on her while dressing, but Mizua says he can forget it since he didn't do it on purpose. After an awkward silence, Mizua asks if he wants to discuss what he's thinking with her, but Kiki says it's not a good topic for discussion. Just then, Mizua reminds him that they're family and he can tell her anything. So Kiki asks what she'd think if he said he wants to make a girl his pet. Shocked, Mizua gets off the couch and says she'll call the police. He then asks again what she'd think if he wanted to become a girl's slave. When Mizua gives the same response, Kiki asks what she'd do if he said he wanted to fall in love. But this time, Mizua says she'll support him if he's serious. Hearing this, Kiki thanks her, but she brushes it off, saying she owes him one for complimenting her looks in the bathroom. While they talk about the horoscopes displayed on TV, the doorbell rings and Kiki finds Sayuki at the door. When she enters, she says she came over because she was bored, so Kiki leads her into his room. Sayuki then commends him for keeping the room tidy, but Kiki reveals he does it to avoid trouble with Mizua. When they settle, Kiki asks Sayuki why she came by, so she pulls out a dog costume and puts them on. Afterwards, she asks Kiki what he thinks, and he says she looks cute in a way. While Kiki stares at her, Sayuki apologizes to him for taking things too far at the garbage pickup. After this, Sayuki blames him for her naughty behavior and explains that she got naughty because he doesn't give her enough love. After giving him a lecture on why dogs become restless, Sayuki says she dropped by his place to get some of that love. Kiki asks what she wants from him, and she requests that he treat her like a dog. Kiki bluntly refuses this, but when Sayuki reaches into her bag and threatens to present Nanju's manga to Mizua, Kiki begs her to reconsider. Shortly after this, he asks Sayuki how to treat someone like a dog, so he asks him to pet her head. When he does this, Sayuki says it makes her happy, so Kiki figures it's not as bad as it sounds. Just then, Sayuki says that dogs enjoy getting their bellies petted, so she unbuttons her shirt and lies on the couch for a belly rub. Meanwhile, Kiki stares cluelessly at her.
Wow! Beautiful!
So Sayuki tells him to get to work. Just then, Kiki rubs her belly, while Sayuki laughs and says it feels comforting. Confused, Kiki asks if she's happy, and Sayuki buries his head between her milk mountains to show him how happy she is. At that moment, Mizua walks in carrying drinks, but quickly shuts the door. Some moments later, Kiki and Mizua hold an emergency family conference, where Mizua accuses Kiki of being a man of culture. But in his defense, Kiki says he was just petting Sayuki's belly. However, when he realizes how awkward that sounds, he freaks out. Not long after this, Sayuki says she had fun, but Kiki says he felt like he lost several years of his life expectancy, so Sayuki turns to take her leave. Kiki then asks if anyone else can be her master, but she explains that she has a sense of pride and only gives up control to those she sees as worthy. After this, she thanked Kiki for making her day fun and took her leave. Not long after this, Yuka shows up at the door and says she came over because she was bored. So when he takes her into his room and asks why she came over, Yuka pulls out a bunny girl costume and says she came to discipline him with it. Surprised, Kiki asks if she plans to wear it in his presence, but she says it's for him.
What?
Hearing this, Kiki tries to protest, but Yuka pulls out Nanju's manga and tells him to either embrace the bunny or expose Mizua to the manga. A few minutes later, Kiki rocks the bunny outfit while Yuka laughs and takes pictures of him. When she's had enough, Yuka points out that he's weird since no one in their right senses would go along with her ridiculous idea. In response, Kiki reminds her that he's only doing it because he was threatened. Just then, Yuka says she's happy and decides to give him a special reward. Just then, she tries to take off her plot cover, but Kiki asks her why she's so generous with her pumpkins. Hearing this, Yuka says he's the only one who gets such rewards because he's special to her and falls on Kiki. Attracted by the noise, Mizua walks in to check if they're alright, but asks if she's interrupting something. Shortly after, Kiki and Mizua hold another emergency family conference, where he tries to prove his innocence, but goes crazy when Mizua won't believe him. Later that day, he gets a call from Nanju, who then asks if Sayuki and Yuka visited him that day. Surprised, Kiki asks how she knows, and she reveals they had it all planned out. After this, she asks if anything happened, and Kiki says a lot of bad things happened. Nanju then asks Kiki if he's ever been in a relationship, but he asks why she's curious, and Nanju asks what he thinks about starting one with her. After a weird pause, Nanju says it's a joke and annoys Kiki, who then tells her to quit messing with him. Kiki heads to his room and checks his stash, but is surprised to find it empty. So the next day, while talking to Koharu and Shoma about it, he guessed that either Sayuki or Yuka is Cinderella, since they were both wearing pink plot covers when they confessed their feelings. Surprised, Shoma asks how that's relevant, and Koharu explains that girls believe that confessing their love to a boy while wearing pink jiggle garments improves their chances of success. While Kiki wonders why Cinderella came back for her present, Koharu points out that she probably never intended to leave the wiggle blanket with the letter. Shoma then points out that finding the snuggle shorts will lead Kiki to the center of the letter. Afterward, Kiki meets Sayuki in the club room and asks if she's alone. When Sayuki says she is, Kiki reveals that he wants her to be his pet. So they went out together, and Kiki revealed that he'll be her owner for the rest of the day. Hearing this, Sayuki gets excited and runs off, but Kiki stops her by saying a good pet walks beside its owner. So Sayuki apologizes and takes her place at his side. After telling her to address him as master from that point forward, Kiki thinks of how to investigate the issue of his lost treasure. Just then, he suggests they ride the roller coaster, but Sayuki says she's wearing a skirt. Kiki then says it doesn't matter since other ladies are wearing skirts too. Sensing her reluctance, Kiki wonders if she's wearing Cinderella's snuggle shorts and says he understands she wants to avoid the roller coaster. However, Dee insists they're going to ride the roller coaster, shocking Sayuki. She then says she'll follow him to hell if that's what it takes. A few moments later, when they sat in the roller coaster, Kiki figures the wind will help with his investigation. But to his dismay, he realizes skirts don't flip up on roller coasters. As they walk together, Kiki taunts Sayuki about being scared of thrill rides, but she ignores him. So they tried a few other park rides, but to his disappointment, Sayuki's skirt just won't lift. Afterward, Sayuki asks Kiki what was next, but he decides to let her choose and adds that he doesn't want to make his pet unhappy. Surprised by this, Sayuki says she'd like to try the Ferris wheel, so they get on it while Kiki thinks it's a good time to take a break. Sayuki pulls out a leash and says she'd like to fully become his pet. With the leash on her neck, Kiki realizes he could make her do anything, so he commands her to take off her skirt, but Sayuki licks him up and shows him a steamy time instead. Shortly after this, Sayuki asks why he suddenly decided to be her master, and Kiki explains that he wanted to know her better. Sayuki then reveals that she knows he spent time reading the dog training book because of her and thanks him for being kind to her. Afterward, Kiki asks why she chose him as her master, and Sayuki explains that it's because she grew attached to the only boy who came by often. After this, she says she doesn't regret making him her master. Later that night, as they stroll, Sayuki asks Kiki to hold her hand. As they walked, Kiki observed her being mindful of her skirt. Right then, he figures she must be hiding something under the skirt, so he halts and requests that Sayuki lift her skirt, surprising her. When she hesitates, he reminds her that he's her master for the day, so Sayuki slowly lifts the skirt. However, when she did, Kiki couldn't believe his eyes.
Wow! Beautiful!
On getting home, Kiki asks Mizua if she ever goes out without her jiggle garments, but she says it's impossible. The next day, he heads to school. Kiki thinks about the moment he realized Sayuki wasn't wearing any cheek huggers throughout their date. While he thinks about this, he bumps into Sayuki in the locker room, so she tells him how embarrassed she felt the previous day. But Kiki says she should have thought about it before heading out without her cheek hammock. Sayuki then says she has decided to refrain from doing it for a while, but Kiki tells her to stop forever. So she says she'll see him after school and hurries off feeling embarrassed. Later that day in the club room, Yuka notices the awkward silence and asks Kiki if something happened between him and Sayuki. When she points out that she's behaving weirdly, Kiki says it's nothing. Yuka then decides to ask Sayuki, but she says she's too embarrassed to say. So Yuka comments that they both must be guilty of something and asks Kiki to help her figure out some math problems. While Kiki tutors Yuka, Sayuki struggles to keep her cool. So Yuka suddenly commends Kiki for being a good tutor, but he backs off and says she's too close. Meanwhile, Sayuki glances at them and focuses on her calligraphy, surprising Kiki. Yuka then points out that she's writing the same thing repeatedly and wonders if her brain has a glitch. Kiki then reveals that something happened the previous day. So Yuka sits Kiki down and gets cozy with him to make Sayuki snap out of the glitch, but she continues. Suddenly, while trying to kiss Kiki, they both fall to the ground. Just then, Nanju arrives and finds Yuka lying on Kiki. She then asks what they're up to, so Kiki says they're studying for the exams. After this, Sayuki avoids Kiki, so he figures something was wrong. Kiki then consults Koharu and Shoma about it, and they point out that he seems to care about Sayuki. Afterwards, they ask what he wants to do, and Kiki reveals he'd like to restore the smile she's lost, so he decides to talk to her. The next day, when he meets Sayuki, she complains about his spending time with Yuka and ignoring her. When Kiki says he didn't intend to do that, Sayuki calls him a lolicon, but he debunks this. Sayuki then says she knows he's playing hard to get, since she had anticipated some thorough spanking after her silkwear-free day, but got none. After this, she accuses Kiki of trying to make her jealous by giving Yuka his attention. In response, Kiki says she's wrong and decides to quit wasting time on investigations, so he asks Sayuki if she went through his stash, and she admits to stealing from him, and adds that she's wearing it. While Kiki thinks he has finally found out who Cinderella is, Sayuki raises her skirt to show him, but when Kiki realizes she's wearing his boxers, he freaks out. Sayuki then confesses that she searched his room for late-night jizzing materials and stole his boxers instead. Shocked, Kiki asks why she stole them, and Sayuki explains that wearing his boxers has a weird pleasure to it. While he wonders what to do with her, Sayuki says she wants to feel his warmth. Later, Kiki walks Yuka home under his umbrella, and she invites him in to have some tea. On entering her apartment, Kiki realizes it's an opportunity to continue his investigation. While she makes the tea, Kiki goes through her collection and marvels at the sight. Just then, Yuka walks in and busts in the act. She then shows him a picture she took of him while going through her stuff, surprising Kiki enough to make him collapse. Afterwards, Yuka orders Kiki around, and he obeys like a good slave while Sayuki watches. So she asks Kiki why he's putting so much effort into taking care of Yuka. In response, he says something happened, and he ended up becoming her slave. Pissed, Sayuki faces Yuka and says she's probably blackmailing him and forcing him to obey. While Yuka stares back blankly, Sayuki points out that Kiki would never be seduced by her pea-sized balloons. In response, Yuka orders Kiki to declare that he loves her pebble pair since he once faked an accident to grab them. Sayuki then says that Kiki once checked out her assets too. Suddenly, the girls argue about whose melons Kiki likes best, but Kiki stops them and explains that each of them is unique. He then adds that if push comes to shove, he'd always choose size over shape and texture. Hearing this, Yuka gets pissed at him, so he says he doesn't dislike small melons to make her feel better. Sayuki then says she won. But when Yuka orders Kiki to shake and he does, Sayuki gets pissed to see her master domesticated and leaves the room. Later that day, Mizua asks Kiki if he's tired, but he says he's fine. He then thinks he might still have a chance to break free from Yuka's slavery if he proves that she's a Cinderella. The next day, Kiki heads to Yuka's house, and since slaves don't get days off, while he follows her in, Kiki decides he must endure whatever Yuka throws his way. Shortly after this, Yuka had him dressed up as a butler and asked him to follow her. Shocked, Kiki asks if he'll be stepping out in the weird costume, and Yuka announces that he'll be her butler for the day. Afterward, when they head out, Yuka uses him as a beast of burden, and when they return home, Kiki is burned out. She then announces that she's going to take a shower, so Kiki asks if she needs help getting out of her clothes. In response, Yuka says it's too early for him to see it all. When she shuts the bathroom door, Kiki gets ready to search, but Yuka suddenly peeks out and threatens to sentence him to life if he goes through her stuff. While he wonders what to do while she's gone, Kiki hears Yuka scream and hurries to the bathroom and finds her pointing to a spider. However, Kiki ignores the spider and stares at her instead. Some moments later, Yuka asks Kiki if he has any last words and sentences him to death. Shocked, Kiki asks if his life is over, and Yuka says seeing her full body is a crime that deserves capital punishment. She then orders him to grovel and beg to be punished. After he does this, Yuka thanks him for running to her rescue and tells him to sit beside her. Just then, she leans on his shoulder and orders him to stroke her hair. Just then, Kiki spots Yuka's picture with her grandmother and asks about her. In response, Yuka narrates how she gets pampered by her grandma and how betrayed she felt when her granny passed away. After this, Yuka kept to herself to avoid losing loved ones. But because Kiki didn't stop talking to her, they became friends. So Yuka decides to get a drink, but trips and falls. Just then, Kiki finds his boxer hidden under her pillow and asks how she got it. Yuka then confesses that she stole it from his room the day she visited. Since they're even, Kiki gets relieved from slave duties and worries about who the culprit is, since neither Sayuki nor Yuka is Cinderella. The next day at school, Kiki and Shoma chat about their boring lives and situationships. Just then, Kiki asks about Koharu, and Shoma explains that she invited him over once, and he finds her shelves filled with videos and diaries about him. In response, Kiki reveals he also caught Sayuki wearing his boxers. Later, Kiki bumps into Nanju, and she asks if he has time. Confused, Kiki asks why, and she reveals he'll be her boyfriend. Shortly after, Kiki looks frustrated while Nanju sketches him and asks him to keep a happy face. Afterward, she asks Kiki to take off his shirt, but he refuses and asks if she needs to draw Shoma too. In response, Nanju says hot guys are easy to draw, unlike monkey lookalikes like him. When she finishes, they get some drinks together, and Nanju says that she got an offer from an editor to try writing a one-shot comic. After Kiki congratulates her, Nanju adds that she has no idea what to do with her life, but will give the offer a shot. Just then, Nanju asks Kiki if he's dating anyone, freaking him out. She then explains that she needs to interview him as material for writing her new manga. She then asks if Kiki is going out with Ayano, but he says he's not, so Nanju sits on him and says he'll be her boyfriend. While Kiki wonders what's going on, Nanju says it's research to discover how boys react when approached by a girl. Thinking she'll kiss him, Kiki closes his eyes, but to his surprise, Nanju pinches his nose and picks up her bag to leave. Afterward, Kiki bumps into Ayano, and she says she still has some paperwork remaining for the end of the semester. Just then, she hugs Kiki and sniffs him. Kiki then threatens to report to the appropriate authorities, but Ayano refuses to let go, so he says they might get in trouble if someone sees them. Ayano then responds by saying it's not a bad idea if they start dating, but Kiki declines. To thank him, Ayano offers Kiki a free ticket to the swimming pool, so he asks why she doesn't want to go, and Yuka says she'd passed out from scent overdose. Kiki then thanks her and heads to the astronomy club room, where he finds Shoma with Koharu. Picking up his phone, he threatens to report to the authorities, but Koharu explains that Shoma tried saving her from a fall. While they pick up the scattered pictures, Kiki suggests they go for a swim at the pool, but they both decline, so he decides to invite the club of degenerates. Suddenly, he spots a dated picture and announces he might know who Cinderella is. The next day, Kiki gathers the members of the Shoto Club and announces that he's got a free ticket for 5 people. When he invites them to join him, Mizua points out that she didn't pack a swimsuit, but Kiki says he's selected new swimsuits for them based on his tastes. When Mizua asks how he figured out their sizes, Kiki says he's an expert with melons. While they rode on a bus, Kiki told the ladies that it was his token of gratitude for their support. Some moments later, Kiki waits for the ladies and decides to reveal who Cinderella is. One after another, the ladies show up in their swimsuits, and Kiki comments on their looks. Just when Kiki suggests they get in the pool, Sayuki and Yuka grab his arms, but before they quarrel, Kiki tells them not to test his self-control, so they decide to settle it by battling with water guns. Suddenly, Yuka shoots Sayuki, and she lands in the pool while Nanju announces Yuka as the winner. After this, Yuka claims ownership of Kiki, while Mizua takes her leave. Afterward, they get on a water slide and Yuka informs Kiki of her fear for water slides. However, when Kiki asks why she got on it, they get swept by the water current. Afterward, while Kiki swims with Sayuki, a giant wave suddenly surges towards them and covers them. When they resurface, Kiki points out that Sayuki's balloons are freely floating, so she freaks out while he shields her. Shortly after this, Kiki takes a walk with Nanju and asks how her manga is coming along. Nanju then responds by saying she's working hard on it, but then adds that it'll move faster if he helps her with research. Since her methods are fun, Kiki says he doesn't mind helping. Suddenly, Nanju slips on a water puddle, but Kiki catches her. He then holds her hand to keep her from slipping, surprising Nanju. Some moments later, Kiki looks for Mizua and finds her chilling alone in an indoor pool. But before he runs his mouth, Mizua shuts him up with a water gun. She then accuses him of abandoning her to flirt with the other girls. Mizua then says that he'll be forgiven if he plays with her, so he tries to walk out of the pool, but gets stuck with muscle cramps. Immediately, Kiki enters the pool and scoops her up. Impressed, Mizua commends his strength, but Kiki says it's easy because she's featherweight. While carrying her on his back, Mizua gets struck with a feeling of déjà vu, so she flashes back to when they were younger. Mizua then comments that Kiki has grown bigger, but he responds by saying she's gotten bigger too in the right places. After this, Kiki drops Mizua as they stare at a rainbow together. Since it reminds Mizua of a flag, she tells Kiki that she's okay with him liking boys. She then reveals that she read Nanju's manga, surprising Kiki, who then asks how she got it. In response, Mizua says that Sayuki gifted it to her. While Kiki freaks out, Mizua says it felt different to explore a new world, but Kiki angrily says the manga is purely fictional. Just then, they hear Koharu publicizing an event, so Kiki calls out to her. Afterward, he introduces her to the other ladies and Koharu tells them about the love confession event. After explaining that the participants will compete on whose confession is the most touching, Sayuki announces that all the girls will participate, and the winner will give a command to Kiki that he must obey. Just then, the event begins and Koharu announces that the contestants' scores will be determined by the cheer of the crowd. When Sayuki makes her confession to Kiki and promises to give him everything, the crowd cheers, and she gets a score of 92. Up next is Yuka, so she makes her confession about Kiki and says she won't forgive him if he wags his tail at some other girl. Impressed, the crowd cheered, and she got a score of 95. Afterward, Nanju steps up and makes her confession to Kiki and points at him in the crowd. Just then, the crowd cheered, and she got a score of 98. Finally, Mizua steps up and confesses her love for Kiki while listing everything he does for her. Just then, the crowd cheers, and Mizua makes a new record. After the event, Mizua asks Kiki how her confession went, and he says he was flattered to hear it. When she asks why he's not riding the bus with the other girls, Kiki says he'd like to talk to her. He then apologizes and suddenly raises her skirt. When he finds her wearing Cinderella's plot covers, Kiki says he knew it and points out that she sent the love letter. After this, Mizua admits defeat while Kiki flashes back to how he brainstormed with his friends to figure it out. He then explains his plan to bring her to the pool on a school day just to get her to wear Cinderella's silky surprise. Mizua then asks how he got her on his radar, so he shows her the picture where she was captured with a date and time. When Kiki reveals how she snuck back into the club room and planted the letter after they were done cleaning the club room, Mizua says he's correct and adds that she left the letter hoping her feelings would reach him. After this, Mizua reveals that she was scared of telling him her true feelings since it would end their relationship as siblings. Kiki then asks if that's why she didn't put her name on the letter, but Mizua explains that she wanted him to concentrate on her only. After this, Mizua confesses her feelings for Kiki, but Kiki reminds her that they're siblings. So Mizua asks if it's wrong to have romantic feelings between siblings, and Kiki says it is. However, Mizua disagrees and points out that they're the same age, but were born only 5 months apart. Hearing this, Kiki says their parents probably tried hard, but Mizua tells him it's impossible. She then apologizes before kissing him, and after this, she announces that it's not wrong to have feelings for him because they're not really siblings. Some days later, Kiki dreams about his life after getting married to Sayuki, and instead of putting her in many positions, he gets to hold her leash while she plays dog in their yard. Suddenly, he wakes from sleep and realizes it's just a dream. Just then, Mizua sits up beside him and plants a kiss on him. Shocked, Kiki calls for an emergency family conference. He then warns Mizua against any more kisses.
Come on, man.
And asks why she's in his bed. In response, Mizua says she's been lonely because he has been acting distant. Hearing this, Kiki blames her for kissing him out of the blue. Mizua then says there's nothing wrong with kissing someone she's in love with. After this, she asks Kiki if he dislikes her, but he goes silent. To get him interested, Mizua points out that her honker bonkers are unusually large, but Kiki says he's not moved by the mundane. Mizua then asks if he'd like to check them out, but before he could refuse, she hops on him. However, Kiki gets on top of her and heads out of the house. Shortly after this, he calls his dad to ask if Mizua is really not his sibling. To his surprise, Kiki finds out they're truly not related. Shortly after this, Kiki meets with Shoma and Koharu at a diner, and after explaining his situation, Shoma tells him everything desirable about Mizua. Kiki then insists she's his sister, but Shoma chips in that they're not related. So when Kiki says he can't bring himself to see her romantically, Koharu points out that forbidden love is the most exciting. Just then, Shoma asks what he plans to do, and Kiki says he needs somewhere to stay. Hearing this, Shoma says he'd like to help, but he has a cousin staying at his place. Suddenly, Koharu suggests he stay at her place, and while Kiki gets excited, he spots the menacing look on Suma's face and suddenly remembers the bro code. So he calms refuses her offer. Afterward, Kiki beats himself up for failing to notice that he's not related to Mizua, and Nanju shows up and says she pulled an all-nighter working. She then asks if he's hungry and offers him a snack. Minutes later, Kiki chews hungrily on the snack and drinks, while Nanju asks what the problem is. When Kiki says it's just a little issue with Mizua, Nanju says he probably peeked at her in the bath. After Kiki defends his reputation, Nanju lectures him on maintaining family relationships and asks if he knows that Mizua is very popular with the boys even though she doesn't stand out. After Nanju reveals that Mizua has not said yes to her countless proposals, she decides to leave. So Kiki thanks her for the bread while she wonders why she's supporting him when she once told him she'd get in his way if he ever found a girlfriend. Meanwhile, Mizua wakes from a nightmare and thinks of how to draft her text to Kiki. While Kiki wanders around the street, it begins to rain, so Mizua steps out to look for him. However, she returns home when she can't find him. Not long after this, Mizua hears a sound at the door and hurries to check. Then she finds Kiki lying on the floor. Afterward, she says she'll go make porridge for him to take medicine. Just then, Kiki apologizes to her, but she tells him not to worry about her when he's the sick one. A few moments later, Kiki wakes up and finds Sayuki sitting at the bedside. So he asks what she's doing, and she explains that Mizua mentioned that he caught a cold when they met at the store. Suddenly, Sayuki offers to take care of him and jumps into bed with him.
Perfect.
To keep him warm. While he blushes, Sayuki comments on how he's always helping her and says that he could bury his head between her pillows if he likes. But before he could respond, Sayuki falls asleep. Just then, Mizua brings in his food and shuts the door while he says it's a misunderstanding. Later, while Sayuki naps on his bed, Yuka arrives and asks why Sayuki is there with him. Kiki then asks why she visited, and Yuka gets worried about his weak look. After this, she announces that she brought him some books to keep him from being bored and pulls Sayuki off his bed. When she wakes, Sayuki wonders what she did wrong, and Yuka reveals that she got a text from her, saying they could do whatever they wanted with Kiki since he's defenseless. In her defense, Sayuki says it's just a cute joke. So Yuka says she'll take over the caretaker role and tell Sayuki to beat it. At this point, Kiki interferes and tells them to quit fighting. So they both grab his arms and begin a tug of war. Just then, Mizua arrives to his rescue and tells them to beat it. Later that night, Kiki lies in bed and thinks about the girls in his life, while wishing they weren't as cultured as they were. After this, he flashes back to the day Mizua was introduced to him as his younger sister. So he gets up to use the toilet but finds Mizua barely clad. Shocked, he closes the door and apologizes. Meanwhile, Mizua asks if he's strong enough to walk around and tells him not to push himself. So Kiki sits at the door and asks if she was upset when Yuka and Sayuki quarreled over him. In response, Mizua says she was only worried they'll take her brother away from her. After this, Mizua apologizes to Kiki and blames herself for his cold, but Kiki disagrees and claims he brought it on himself. Hearing this, Mizua says she won't try to kiss him if he doesn't like it, but will wait till she gets him to love her. Just then, Kiki asks how she fell in love with him, and Mizua narrates that it started the day she met him. She had lost her family, but Kiki reassured her that they'll always be together. After this, Mizua steps out of the bathroom and thanks Kiki for always being there with her. She then confesses her love for Kiki and hugs him. Just then, her towel falls off, but they both laugh it off while Kiki decides they're siblings even if they're not biologically related. The next day, Mizua makes breakfast and they return to their normal lives. Although a few things change, Kiki realizes he's still surrounded by culture degenerates and figures he won't be leaving singlehood soon. Later, Mizua decides to use her free order coupon from the pool competition and requests that Kiki act as her boyfriend for a day and take her on a date. So he obliges and wonders why he feels excited about it. So Mizua slides on her favorite panty and they both head out on the date, while Kiki returns with cones of ice cream. He finds Kiki staring at a picture and on checking it out, his eyes widen with interest. Surprised, Kiki asks why she has such picture. So Mizua reveals that she's an exhibitionist. If you made it to the end of the video, prove it by commenting which of the girls you wish you wifed up. And if you like anime recaps like this, then watch this video right here.